God damn it. What an intro to a podcast.
That's going to be the intro. I'm cutting that.
God.
Those laughing lines,
Lord.
that'll be the intro. We'll leave the rest of it to be a mystery.
Wow, we even have an audience today.
All right, welcome back, everybody.
Welcome to the pod, everyone.
Welcome to 36% with Brett and Adam.
Oh,
Today is February 8th, 2019.
It's good to be back. And it is, again, welcome to the Arctic.
Yeah, it
Freezing
is
cold.
still really cold
And
here
icy.
in Missouri.
Very
We
icy.
survived the polar vortex,
Yes,
surprisingly.
and then it snowed
Amazingly.
again.
Yeah, it just never really ceases. So take that, global warming.
The stuff we're going to be covering today involves
Everything that we've missed in the last 2 weeks.
which covers the presidential announcement of Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey.
Yeah, it turns out he's running.
No way.
Yeah.
We'll be covering what's recently gone down in the governor's office of Virginia
Yep.
and the shenanigans that has occurred.
Yep, we're going to try our best to not talk about the State of the Union, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yep, because everyone with a podcast or,
Everyone with an opinion.
anyone with an opinion in regards to politics has to talk about
Yep.
it. Legally contracted.
And whatever else tickles our fancy at the national and international level.
Oh, and then hopefully we'll have some time to get into some stuff about St. Louis and St.
Yeah.
Louis County.
What's going on in the House down here?
Yep.
The legislature down here.
All right, well, without further ado,
Let's get into
let's
it.
do this.
All right. So, in the intervening 2 weeks that we've had, we we ended the last podcast with a long list of the Democratic hopefuls for the presidency, and we can add another name to the list,
Joining them-
unsurprisingly.
Yes, is Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
He is an interesting candidate,
Yep.
to say the least.
Mr. Clean himself.
Yes. Just to give you a quick background, he was born and raised in New Jersey. He is an African-American male. He has served in the Senate for quite a while. Before then, he was the mayor of Newark.
Yep.
Where
he's from.
Yeah, and honestly, he still lives there.
Yep.
I learned he was
Learned a lot through his campaign video.
I know.
Yeah.
That too. Honestly, very impressed.
Yeah,
I
it was
really liked
it was a good one.
I was a
it was
big
a good
fan.
one.
He has had a very interesting track record in national politics. But to give you a background about him, he was born into a affordable housing unit, and still lives in one today.
Yeah.
He is the only senator I think to ever, and just has a very interesting history in regards to being quite a progressive candidate to a degree.
Yeah, he comes from humble beginnings, and
He
he
really does.
practices the kind of politics that would really benefit the kind of people that he was born and raised around.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to, we spoke about the authenticity factor of candidates a while ago, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think he's someone that has it, but there's a lot of things about Cory Booker that kind of rub me the wrong way, and it's like in his delivery of everything, he
It's-
always seems so mechanical.
He's also, I think, one of the most energetic individuals to ever serve in Congress.
And that,
That man has so much energy.
that's worth something, but again, just every time I hear him talk, it just sounds fake.
It really does. But I
It's
think
robotic.
the crazy thing is the fact that I think the more and more I watch of him, and more I am introduced to, just Senator Booker, the more that seems real.
Okay.
And I think that I have to be convinced. I think it just took a while for me to understand that.
Okay.
But I think more importantly, it's something that people that know him really like about him.
Yeah.
But I think this is a criticism I've heard is the fact that he just doesn't turn off. And that's always the case. And the most controversial thing about Senator Booker is the fact that he, for a long time, has this track record of
They
voting.
wear whiteface in the 80s. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get into that. No, it's his connection to Wall Street and pharmaceutical industries.
Yeah.
Because he has taken, his old campaigns have taken, large sums of money from both, Wall Street connected affiliates and the mostly the pharmaceutical industry, because that's very, very large in New Jersey especially.
Yeah.
I think Connecticut is the largest medical.
But I mean,
state.
he fits the brand of East Coast
Yeah.
corporate connected Democrat that the Republicans and Trump is going to rail against.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting, especially when you parallel him and Senator Warren, is the fact that she has been highly against those entities.
Yeah.
And he has this sympathetic characterization. But I think
Do you think that's going to survive in the campaign? Do you think he's going to hold on to that,
No.
or do you think? I think he's
No.
going to take the popular stance and come out against all people who have given him tons of money.
I think what he will do, because he recently voted for Bernie Sanders' pharmaceutical bill in the Senate,
Right.
which basically what that would do, it would drastically lower pharmaceutical drugs in this country, the price of them, and more basically match them and make them competitive with Canada.
Okay.
I think that's what the bill did.
Okay.
But he has voted, I think basically what he just has to do is the fact that his recent track record speaks much more to the progressive ideals that he now, holds. Yeah. And as long as he can separate himself from that, I think he has a much higher chance of appealing to many voters, especially those who will not be as appealed to, say, like a Senator
who won't be, who won't be as attracted to such a far left candidate.
Who comes off as much more progressive.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I think his high level of energy is going to serve him well as far as campaigning. I think he'll be a good candidate in that factor, or in that facet. But I go back to my biggest thing is I just want to make sure whoever we put up on that stage against Trump is going to be somebody who isn't going to play his game. And I don't know enough about Senator Booker right now to make that proper assessment. I haven't seen him campaign, so I really don't know. But, we'll see.
That we will.
Yeah.
That we will.
All right.
Oh, man. Talking about another candidate from the West Coast, from the East Coast. Not candidate.
Oh.
A former candidate now.
Okay. So in 2016, Adam, if I remember correctly, you worked for rising star of the Democratic Party, gubernatorial candidate out in Virginia. You want to tell us about that?
Right. Yeah. No, I ran a whole system of phone banking for him.
Yeah, you phone banked for Ralph Northam.
Which was interesting.
Ralph Northam.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know much about him before I got involved in this. And obviously not many people knew a certain side of him.
Not a lot of people remember the 80s. As it turns out.
God. Okay, so basically, where are we going?
Yeah, what we're alluding to.
The governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, last week, photos emerged of him. What
was his yearbook page in his med school?
Yes, from his So doesn't matter where it's from. Regardless, there was this photo under his page of someone dressed as a member of the Ku Klux Klan and someone in blackface, and obviously, this is an issue.
Yeah.
And considering it is under his page in a yearbook photo, a yearbook, you would think, oh, that's him, which is what everyone assumed.
Well, and let's not forget that the day it got found out about,
he came out and said and apologized for how he appeared in that photo, not specifying which one he was.
Yeah.
Then the next day, he comes back and says, hey, guys,
JK.
Actually, I don't think that I did appear in that photo. And, this whole mistake and all this stuff. Oh, but I wore blackface back in the 80s for a Michael Jackson dance competition.
Yeah, like, casually.
Like, goddamn.
That wasn't me in blackface. I did that a different time.
Yeah. I mean, and so, anyways, obviously this is problematic. Also, the fact that his wife had to physically stop him from moonwalking during the apology is a whole other issue.
Ralph Northam really has not been handling this well. I mean, he's still sitting in the seat as the governor of Virginia now that every Democrat and their brother has called on him to resign. And I mean every Democrat.
Literally every one of them. Also, I think, real quick, side note, I hate Republicans. And the best part about this is the fact that
bipartisanship here, 36%.
When this came out, there was the Republican, there was this news article from the source that is heavily, Republican based, on not terribly credible. And this is where it broke. And initially they were like, oh, this is going to be a great example of how Democrats don't hold themselves to the same standard that they do Republicans. Yeah. And then they just got shit on by every Democrat asking him to resign.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, in the situation, first of all, it's atrocious that
he should resign.
Anybody would wear blackface and say, yeah, this is okay. Like, I don't even think you can make the comment, oh, it was a different time.
Yeah.
It's different. So that's horrible. But this particular situation is made even worse because the lieutenant governor of Virginia is also facing allegations of sexual assault, is being investigated for that. The attorney general of Virginia came out a couple of days ago and said, hey, just so everyone's clear, I also wore blackface in the 80s to impersonate he said brown, like face paint.
Yep.
To impersonate some cool rappers that we admired. So apparently everyone in Virginia in the 80s was just running around with shoe polish, putting it anywhere but their shoes. And one of the fun little pieces of trivia about all of this is that if hypothetically the governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general, which in the line of succession, those would be the top three in Virginia, if all three of them are knocked out from scandal that goes next to the Speaker of the House, who's a Republican.
Oh, good.
who's a Republican.
Yeah, interesting fact. I also don't know enough about this, but the lieutenant governor who has been accused of sexual assault, a woman came forward today, which adds much more weight to this. Interestingly, though, the story that broke this came from the same exact news source that broke Northam's.
Yeah.
And so initially it was not. I mean, the lieutenant governor came out and said this was false and that this did not occur and that kind of thing, but.
I think what a lot of this illustrates, though, and you can take the pieces of this for the horribleness that they are, but as a whole, we're going to see things like this again and again and again and again leading up until the presidential election. Now, the whole piece where these came from the same news source, you can make any conspiracy theory you want out of that, but the fact remains that these kinds of stories, these sensational stories of mistakes in people's past, are going to be the highlight because they're controlling the news coverage.
Oh, yeah.
And so the Republicans are going to try to push as hard as possible to keep the stories about the atrocities committed and then the divisions that then occur from, because as we've seen, Northam has refused to step down.
Yeah.
It's dividing the Democratic Party, not really, because everyone agrees he should step down. He's just not doing it. But there are these stories that are counterproductive to actual governing because they don't provide us with anything. They highlight mistakes in people's past, which, no, we should not transgress lightly. But again, it's going to be sensationalism for the next year and a half until the election.
Yeah.
So buckle up for that, everybody.
No, exactly. And I think that this is going to be – it'll be interesting to see how this does change, because since the 2016 presidential bid, we will, that which was heavily covered by, all these kinds of scandals and sensational news sources, stories and that kind of thing, what that is going to, how that will look like in this new one. And I think importantly from that, there was a really great piece in the New York Times, and I'm blanking on who wrote it, but it basically said that if we want to continue having the moral ability and high ground to continue calling for Trump's impeachment about offenses that have occurred in the past and that kind of thing, that we must hold our own to the same. And it makes a really good case for calling for the impeachment of Governor Northam.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But we can also walk and chew gum at the same time. We can cover both of their
definitely so.
Impeach both of them at the same time.
No, I couldn't agree more in that regard. But I think what it basically made the case for is that even if you don't think that Northam should resign, I think it makes a very good case for a reason that you would change your opinion in that regard.
Yeah.
So
I feel no qualms about asking
neither.
for Ralph's resignation.
Nope, me neither.
Yeah, so that's been Virginia.
Even though it's the only election that I was involved in that we actually won.
Hey, not all of us can have winners. Things happen.
You have a Democratic governor of Kansas, Brett. Be happy.
I don't work for.
Be satisfied.
I worked for someone who ran against her in the primary.
Okay, it doesn't matter. It's still a victory.
Yeah, but hey, primaries.
Yeah, speaking of which, today,
what a segue.
Today I received a photo from a friend that lives in Iowa of her hugging Senator Cory Booker.
Damn.
And I became jealous as fuck because it's also probably the only good thing about living in Iowa. It's
the fact you're not wrong.
So basically, I got on this point is the fact that I believe that Iowa should not. That the primaries should not be held in the same order that they are every year.
Yeah.
And that Iowa is not deserving of a state to have this caucus first every year.
Iowa should not be a state. You heard it here first, folks. So for those of you who might not be aware of the phenomenon that is the Iowa caucuses, so for the presidential election, or for, any election, really, there's an order to how the states go in at the national level and primary. And then, because it's not all on the same day for reasons that I can't fathom, primaries happen throughout the span of 2 or 3 months.
I think it's longer than that.
It could be longer. Very well could be longer than that. I don't know the time between the Iowa caucus and the California primary. But regardless, all the states do it at different times.
Yes.
Iowa has always, well, not always, for a very, 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 very long time held the original primary.
Yes.
In all of the election years.
Before the second is what it states.
Yes.
That's how they have it laid out.
Yeah, they wrote in their actual state constitution, it is constitutionally mandated that Iowa has to have the first primary. In their case, they caucus as their primary. So the Iowa caucus is this great big state fair-looking thing of politicians coming and stating their case. And pollsters from time immemorial have used it as an indicator of who is going to inevitably win. If you do well at the Iowa caucus, it helps you out with the rest of the campaign for the next couple of months.
Yeah, whether or not that's either in the general or just the and this is
surviving the primary.
Yeah, basically, and that's the case I'm trying to make here is that Iowa is far from representative of the rest of the country.
There are a lot of people that would disagree with that. There are a lot of people that would disagree with that. I think that's why pollsters love it.
It's stupid though, because you only have 2 states or 3 states that care about ethanol. And that's Nebraska, Iowa, and Indiana.
Yeah, but if you can attract those people, you can basically get the Midwest. Because though those are the only 3 states that care about ethanol, people in the Midwest really love corn, man.
Oh, my God.
They really
corn is
do.
great. Yes. But ethanol...
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, this is the thing, though. I really think that they should move... And the system I would propose, because I also don't think New Hampshire is deserving of having the second every year, is that they should honestly put it on... Not so much a lottery system, but it should be a cycle. It should be cycled.
Okay.
And I think you should also definitely change what region starts it every year.
Okay.
So maybe this year we'll have Iowa. Sure. Iowa, you can keep it. The second one, maybe, I don't know. Let's put it in Pennsylvania. The next one, New Mexico. One after that, Washington. Then we'll throw it down to Florida.
So for the sake of...
Up to Maine.
For the sake of variety being
Indiana.
The spice of life.
Yeah. I genuinely, honestly, though, we should... Because what it would do... Because also this is important. Because whoever actually starts winning these early primaries oftentimes stays in the race far longer. And it's not always tied to how good of the candidate they are. It also depends on how attractive they are to the different populations and demographics represented in those those parts. So basically,
yes.
Ted Cruz won Iowa.
Yes.
Great. That doesn't, Ted Cruz...
He did not become president.
No, but he lasted the longest.
Right.
However, if you had John Kasich win that would have changed the look of the presidential campaign for the rest of it. Also, if you had fucking Donald Trump win Iowa, it would have definitely changed how the rest of the primaries went.
Yeah. I mean, I think my only rebuttal to this is that the order of primaries doesn't mean anything.
But...
from a constitutional or political from a political standpoint, they mean a lot. But from just a pure optics standpoint, the only reason the order of the primaries matters because we have enshrined Iowa as this bellwether for how an election's going to go.
Yeah.
I don't know if we continue to have that or lose that if we say, this year it's the New Mexico caucuses going to decide who's going to win the presidency. I don't know if maybe we take away the edge that someone gets from winning Iowa. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we level the playing field. But regardless, kind of in the same boat as you. I don't really care about Iowa, and I don't know why they should have the first caucus. I think we should do away with caucuses anyway, but that's another rant for a different time.
Yes.
We feel passionate about Iowa today, folks.
We really do.
Yeah, that's the moral of that story.
Yes, even though they're also glazed in ice.
Yeah, everyone's frozen up here. It's a true tragedy.
Yep.
TRU tragedy.
Right. So the State of the Union, which occurred late because Pelosi would not let Trump in. Okay, first off, I love Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah. So
love that woman.
The State of the Union got delayed as a negotiating tactic for reopening the government, which since our last podcast, has been reopened.
Yeah, because we're here.
So since then, there's been a State of the Union.
Which is a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the best part of the State of the Union, obviously, was
everyone's
Pelosi
hot
clap.
takes after.
Oh,
that too.
That's become my new phone background. Everyone, if you don't follow our Twitter, you should, at the 36 Podcast.
Yeah. So the State of the Union happens.
Yeah.
And no one's surprised by anything that goes on with the State of the Union.
No.
The speech was 90 minutes of just garbage and rabble.
And mostly not speaking.
Yeah, it was a lot of clapping. But, I mean, that's pretty par for the course.
That's a Trump State of the Union, though.
I mean, that's what there was no heckling from the crowd this time. I was a little disappointed by that.
Instead, there was chanting.
Yeah, there was a lot
for
of
3 minutes.
Yeah. The takeaways from it, I think more than anything, I took nothing away from the speech. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, no.
What I took away from it afterwards is everyone's fucking hot takes and opinions on it. They were all the same.
Yeah. Oh, obvious. Everyone just thinks that's awful.
Right.
Because it is.
Right.
The Trump is a shit speaker.
Yes.
Awful at
we knew that.
speeches. And the fact that he couldn't decide whether or not he wanted to unify or be a fucking asshole.
Yeah. We had Stacey Abrams give the response to the State of the Union. I thought she did a good job. She gave a good speech.
Yeah. No,
a good 10-minute speech.
What I really liked about her speech, because I think it's always difficult, this position of giving a response speech, because And this is interesting because I had inside look into how a state handles this.
Yep.
And it was an interesting thing. But the fact that it's very difficult to deliver, and it's quite hard because also you have to prepare it all the way before the speech, so you don't, you
have no idea what's being said in the State of the Union.
And basically, the point then, what you're trying to make is just sell a contrary message. And I think that she did that quite well.
Yeah.
I liked what she talked about. And I think importantly what she talked about is her experience recently with voter suppression,
right, and
how that is a major issue that we need to handle in the next 2 years before we all get together again and have a nice day of voting.
Yeah.
So
and it's my biggest complaint with it, though, and again, I really like Stacey Abrams.
No,
I wish
wonderful.
I wish you would have won the governor's race down in Georgia.
Me
I really do. But in another positive thing is the fact that Chuck Schumer picked her to give the response.
Yeah.
Which is a little unusual considering she's not an elected official, which usually it's given by an elected official, or at least a prominent member. She's not running for president either.
Yeah.
So what this tells me is that right, yeah, she hasn't announced yet,
or at least this cycle, but maybe eventually.
Yeah,
maybe eventually, Stacey.
I think what it was really good for is saying, okay, we're going to have Donald Trump on screen, and then immediately following, we're having an African American woman up on screen, and engaging in politics and two completely different types of politics. And I think the optics of that alone really convey this good message of what we're going to be up against in 2020, in that we have the politics of just conservative republicanism, the far-right conservative republicanism, which is just shouting and fear-mongering, and then the more pragmatic version of politics, which the Democratic Party has long been championed by African-American women. And the pragmatic politics of Democratic policies is helping people. And her message was exactly that. It was helping people to make sure they have a voice, to make sure that they can vote. But also, she didn't talk about, she didn't get onto policies as much as again, Trump, thought he did in the 90 minutes. But I think that it was a good representation. It was a solid choice by Chuck, and I liked that part of it.
It was good. I think honestly, I don't think we'll ever be blown away by a response speech. I think they're very.
I was blown away by Kennedy's. What do you mean? I was blown away that someone let him walk on stage looking like that.
Oh my God! Those of you that don't remember the debacle of Chapstick Gate, because that man's lips were as shiny as the sun.
Distracting.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
No, actually, real quick before we move on, Stacey Abrams recently wrote a really good editorial. I think it was the Washington Post. And in it, she talked about how identity politics is actually good, and that it's not good in the way that we normally think of it as. But what it is basically, Republicans identify identity politics as a very negative thing, but what it really is just affording rights to marginalized groups that have not been represented in government before. And I think that is a very new and interesting way of actually looking at it, and something that she speaks to very well, considering the kind of suppression that she went through and the voting cycle went through back in 2018.
Here's my question to you. We have seen Democrats or Democratic hopefuls or just people that would consider themselves not of the Republican Party using print media, specifically writing editorials in this capacity to make their points, to lob their shots across the aisle in terms of what they think politics should be and how to correct the problem. That's how our team is using the media. Meanwhile, their team is using the media to just shove stories down people's throats and make them scared. Do you think our approach is a good one, taking the high road and making editorials about how identity politics might be a good thing, or should we come out and say, pay attention?
I don't know. It's a very interesting divide that you see between the two parties and how we use media. I think the major difference is the fact that we are not in power and they are. And that it's also, I think another major thing is the fact that we're not campaigning yet. And I think that's, if this editorial was written by a presidential campaign or a presidential candidate right now, it would significantly change the attention it got, how it was looked at, and then it would also dictate how that person talks about it from here on out.
But is that going to be attractive to a majority of voters? I think who are not going to read the editorial page of the Wall Street or the New York Times.
But I think what it does do is it provides an opinion from a very prominent and attractive Democrat that other Democrats might take on.
Is that message far-reaching? Is that opinion broad-based?
It would be very interesting to see if a rebranding of identity politics does occur. And just to use this example here, like if Senator Warren came out and started talking about how identity politics is a good thing and that we should celebrate that because the Democratic Party is a compilation of identities and and groups. It's the Big Tent Party.
It's the politics,
and we are
of
far more
identity.
representative of the United States than the Republican Party.
Yeah,
and how we should celebrate that fact, and how identity politics is just a movement towards equality of rights for everyone.
Yeah.
Right there I think is a very attractive message. Now, whether or not I think an editorial is the place where we should only harp that I think it's important that we continue any kind of movement of messaging like that.
Yeah. I'm scared that again we're taking the high road, the educated road, let's find the best way to do this, not let's find the most effective way to do this.
I think
which is what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, what I think is I don't think we should ever stoop to the level of fear mongering that they.
No, but we can be loud and obnoxious.
This has been a very interesting thing, and I know Brett and I have been trying to make this podcast far more Midwest related, and something that
state
is
and local, baby,
near and dear to many of our listeners, at least in Missouri's hearts. For those of you that actually live in the city of St. Louis,
the St. Louisians, or the county,
This is also important. The county or the city, which basically something that has been very interesting, very gripping to that region.
Hot topic.
Yes,
hot topic
is the merger between St. Louis City and St. Louis County.
Yeah. For those of you not know, St. Louis, the city, is not in St. Louis, the county.
And technically, there is no county that incorporates the city of St. Louis.
It's true. It's county-less.
And it's one of the last cities in the United States that has this divide.
Mm-hmm.
Cities that used to have it and then reversed include great places like Austin, Texas, Indiana, Houston. There's others. I think LA did this as well. This is a trend that basically the merging of these places occurred to reverse the economic hurt that was caused by white flight.
Right.
And this is actually a way of reversing economic depressions within inner cities.
Yeah.
And that's something that's been highly effective in many of the places that did this. In other cases, not so much. But what it has done in the past is significantly help the economies and the communities of these places. However, I mean, of course, it has some issues in the initial merging and that kind of thing. But
an important detail in all this is that St. Louis is one of the, and I mean this in St. Louis City, and then it spread out to the county, is one of the most gerrymandered places in the United States. And it's a result of white people fleeing the area, which has caused so many problems. And it is what led to this inevitably.
Exactly. No, and basically how to go back in this. Back in 1873, I believe, was the first proposed when they initially split.
Yeah.
Then 2-3 years later, they tried to merge back together, and it failed. And they set this in the Constitution that only the people in the county and the city were able to vote on this to actually create a plan to merge back together. Today, there is actually a statewide effort, or there's an effort in St. Louis to get a statewide vote to merge these two. And this is led by this group called the Better Together Group, which is this interest group that advocates, I think for a year now, they've been advocating for the merging between. It's headed by some billionaire that lives in St. Louis that is highly influential in literally everything that goes on down there, which raises a lot of red flags. Initially, I think the mayor of St. Louis City is in favor of this. The mayor of St. Louis County, or I think the largest county, or largest city in the county, was in favor and then dropped out initially. There's been a lot of the hullabaloo, basically. There's a lot of this, for lack of a better word. There's a lot that has gone on with this, and especially at this organizational level. And they have two reports. They have this executive and this full report that actually explain all the economic benefits and all of this stuff of the merging. And I don't know how to fully feel about this, and also not being a resident of either of those places, I'm not sure that I should have to have an opinion or voice
you
that
don't
in
have
a way
to.
that
You don't have to.
Well, I have an opinion, but what I'm not sure I'm going to talk about it right now.
Okay. God, if only we had a platform where we could just harp on our opinions for an hour.
Oh, there's a reason I'm not able to do that, Brett. But what I do think is the fact that there shouldn't be a statewide vote to decide the fate of this, and that it should literally be limited only to the people of St. Louis and St. Louis County, which is something that has been near and dear to many people's hearts in those places, as I have recently found out.
And so just a quick little sketch of the politics of this is, so basically what happened was, following the Civil War, Missouri was part of the Union, but there were slaves in Missouri. It was a complicated little situation.
Yep.
St. Louis has been a big city since Missouri has been a state, and it's been a big city for a long time.
Located directly on the Mississippi River.
Yeah. Well, moral of the story is it was a segregated place for a really long time. And then, as what happens with white flight, as desegregation begins to happen, we have this is migration of poor African American people that are out in the county, out in the rural areas, coming into where the jobs are and the opportunities are into the city.
Yeah.
In pursuit of money and a stable life. And so as they begin to come into the neighborhoods, the wealthy, influential white people then move out to the county to build suburbs to basically get away from the black people moving into the neighborhood. We see it all across America. Well, what they decided to do in St. Louis is that when you exist in a county, you exist in a city, when you exist in any sort of municipality, you have to pay the taxes of whatever that municipality is. For places like big cities, anybody living in a big city knows, your taxes are generally higher than when you live out in the rural areas because there are more commodities you have to pay for, there's more infrastructure, there's more goods and services that need to be taxed for in order for the local government to be able to provide for you. Well, let's say that St. Louis County encompasses St. Louis. Every resident of St. Louis County is having to pay the taxes for not only their own rural aspects of life, but also the many, many, many different aspects of the city life. So all the rich white people go out to the county and say, well, we don't want to have to pay for all the black people we just moved away from. So they disincorporate St. Louis and basically say, hey, we're going to establish our own thing out here. Now we have a lot of interests inside St. Louis that aren't collecting the tax revenue from all of the wealth that exists in the county that was specifically designed to flee away from them. And they're being hurt because they don't have the tax basis or the tax base that they should have, that they need to have. And so they're trying to reincorporate with the county. Yeah. And that's the gist of it.
Basically. And the city, I think, largely does need those sources of revenue. And another major aspect is the fact that it would then merge a lot of the municipal governments and services such as like a police department and fire departments and that kind of thing. All of those would become incorporated, not initially, but this whole plan does this over time. It creates a new municipal mayor of St. Louis becomes a much bigger role. Encompasses way more people. Yeah. This is a crazy thing is the fact that the city of St. Louis houses, I think 340,000 people.
I'd believe that.
However, the metropolitan area of St. Louis is around 3 million.
Yeah.
So you have, naturally ridiculous amounts of people, wealth, and that kind of thing that all are expanded beyond. And so I think it's very odd coming from Indianapolis, where you have an incorporated city, to have a divide in this regard.
Yeah.
And I think it's very weird.
Well, it's unique. This is one of the few places left in the country that are like this.
Yeah. And
as you mentioned earlier.
It's an issue that I think will be interesting to see how this plays out. Because also, technically it's not constitutional to have a statewide vote, as to my understanding. And so it's weird that this is their initiative. Because basically, if the state votes on it, St. Louis will become incorporated.
Right.
If it's just St. Louis and St. Louis County, we will see. But more importantly, if Senate Concurrent Resolution 17 does pass, which would raise the minimum amount of people that have to, or the minimal voting threshold to actually pass this, because right now as it stands, it would take a majority in both the city and the county to pass. To merge the city and the county. According to this legislation, it would raise that to 60%. So you have to get
of population or voting?
Of voting. So you have to, 60% of the vote has to be in favor of merging in both the county and the city to merge, which is crazy. Exactly. You're never going to get that. Yeah. Like Clean Missouri or Prop A.
Any other referendum.
All of those they pass 63, 64%, but those are ridiculously popular. Not terribly. I mean, with the people of Missouri, those are great things.
Yeah, I think Prop A only passed it was in the high 60s.
Yeah.
Maybe the low 70s. No. But that was something that we had ridiculous turnout. People were not expecting such a high turnout.
Oh, God, no. But
so to expect something to get to 60 is ridiculous.
I mean, this is just something that people feel much more divided upon in Missouri. This is definitely going to be a whole different. It would basically make it impossible for that to occur. So, anyways, there's our Missouri topic.
Yeah, no, I think this is a perfect insight into the intricacies and the subtleties of state and local politics, and actually how much they affect your day-to-day life. Because if the merger ends up happening, it will dramatically change St. Louis and
Oh,
St.
yeah.
Louis County.
No, and I think that one thing that could really that will occur soon because of Amendment 1 of the Missouri Constitution, but what this will also do is change the districting within St. Louis.
Yeah, it would.
And basically, like, there already exists in St. Louis with the Congressional District 1 in St. Louis, which is held by Senator Scott Sifton, who's a former Truman alumni. His district is very competitive and always has been. What it would do would add another competitive district in there and potentially another Democrat. And importantly, you know, as St. Louis continues to grow as a city in the county area, not as a city, and that's a significant issue economically, but as it continues to expand and grow with a more urban population, as that does continue to spread, that would very much change how basically it would threaten a Republican supermajority in the state of Missouri. Probably not a majority.
In the Senate, at least.
In the Senate,
It most likely would not affect the House greatly enough to overturn, 30 seats that the Democrats would need?
I think it's like 25.
A ridiculous number.
Basically, for those that don't know, in Missouri, we have one of the largest houses and one of the smallest Senates. It's the fourth largest house in the entire country, and it's the 13th smallest Senate. I have to do research on this. Basically, we have 34 senators, and we have
looked this one up.
163 House members.
Yeah.
Of that, 47 of those are Democrats, which is ridiculous.
It's some real low number.
Yeah. And in the House or in the Senate, we have 10 Democrats as opposed to 24 Republicans.
Yeah.
And so we have large hurdles to jump before Missouri becomes at a statewide level
a blue state again. Yeah,
because I don't think basically until the parties decide to flip, Missouri will not
until
be a
Democrats
blue
can
state.
decide if they want to actually appeal to rural people or not.
Yeah, because this is a very interesting thing about Missouri history is the fact that you have a large elderly population, and some of them still do that used to always reliably vote Democrat.
Yeah, blue dog Democrats.
Yeah, exactly, these blue dog Democrats, and what
20 years ago the state was blue.
Exactly. And, not terribly far away, but
within living memory for most people. Not us, but for most people.
Yeah, but within living memory. We were living, though.
I was 1 year old.
Hell yeah. The 36% was founded, written, and directed by Adam Childers Arnold and Brett Combs.
Music in this episode is provided by Purple Planet. You can check them out at purple-planet.com.
The presenting sponsor of the 36% is Avian Apparel.
You can still use that code THE36 when you check out for 15% off.
Yeah, you can. Good times.
Our audio engineering for this episode is done by Bert Crumbs.
And our ukulele muse is, as always, Adam California.
Special thanks to Christian Ferguson for
cover art.
Yeah,
which has not changed.
No, it really hasn't.
Should we update for season 2?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe season 3. Speaking of which, we might be stopping this in a week because the government might shut down again.
Yeah, God, fingers crossed.
Anyways, thanks everyone for listening to our second episode of season 2.
It's been real fun.
Yeah. I'm Adam.
And I'm Brett.
And this has been
the 36%.